Hello there, well my name's Paul Sudnick and I'm now going to take you through the second part of the course as we start looking at the internationalization process from the micro perspective. The first thing we want to do is to understand the industry that we're in, and some of the work that you've done up to so far has allowed you to look at the environment of the organization and to look at it from a global, regional and country level. What we're going to do here is to blow up this green diagram and look at it from the perspective of the purple diagram here underneath, and we're specifically going to look at the international product life cycle area of this purple diagram. The product life cycle model helps us to understand the course of industry evolution. How has the industry changed, and how have the products that the industry has delivered to the marketplace changed in the course of that evolution of the industry? I'm sure you're familiar from your marketing studies with the concept of the product life cycle, where the product evolves through a cycle of 4 stages, broadly through introduction, then to a growth phase, into maturity, and then ultimately into decline. And of course, companies want to try and catch the growth curve somewhere between growth and maturity and improve the product so as to avoid the decline phase and to maintain growth. The perfect example of this is Apple, who every year essentially introduce some improvement to the product with the aim to maintain this kind of growth curve that the product has. The international product life cycle curve sees many manufactured products go through an international life cycle of 3 stages, where the product is first exported, then exporting declines, and the country becomes an importer. Essentially, these 2 curves, the product life cycle and the international product life cycle curve, may be superimposed on each other, and both the product life cycles are a good indicator of the rate of growth of industry sales. Essentially, what we see then here is the product life cycle curve with the emergence of the product, the growth of the product, the maturity, and the decline. And we see here how innovations and intensive sales efforts drive the emergence of the product as maturity is reached at the peak of the curve before going into a period of decline when revenues drop and profits drop. You'll see here in this early section of emergence where of course profits are below the dotted line, indicating an investment by the company into the product, which is then of course recouped during the subsequent periods of growth. Here we see then an example of recreating music recordings, where we see the emergence of the cassette recorder. Some of you might still remember those from your childhood when you watched Disney films on them, I suspect. And then we move on to the move away from VHS, the way in which DVD then takes over, reaches its own maturity, and then gives way to Blu-ray discs and to all the technology that we have today in terms of streaming. So we can summarize these phases in the IPLC model in the following way. The first phase, we see the introduction into the home market. According to the IPLC model, most new products are first introduced in rich developed countries. And then as those products gain ground in the domestic market, they are exported to other developed countries, and the products reach widens as demand develops in other high-income countries. In the third phase, we see export by developed countries to developing countries, where late movers begin to export and even produce the new product in the developing countries. In the fourth phase, the developed countries export to a home country, and then in the fifth phase, developing countries export to other developing countries. And essentially, we see the way in which internationalization of a product begins to overcome all barriers, and we see the product then achieving some kind of traction in all parts of the world. You'll see here the way in which we can actually represent this process through the graph. Here you'll see the black line going through the original growth of the new product, reaching maturity in the second stage, and then fading away. But in the light grey line, we see the way in which The developed countries then grow on top of the base country, and then finally in the third phase, represented by the red line, the way in which developing countries actually take the strain, if you like, and allow the product to grow. So to sum up then, it's possible to see how the product life cycle curve and the international product life cycle curve define the way in which an industry moves with the market, the way in which it tries to develop new products, to actually improve existing products, and the way in which it then introduces those products into the marketplace, not only in its home country, but into international markets as well, both developed and developing markets. And we see that there are a number of factors at play as companies internationalize. And what management is trying to do is to balance all of those different forces at the same time. And this, I think, is what the target company that you are studying in this module is trying to do.